The Locked On Podcast Network presents The Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Michigan has fired head coach Sherrone Moore with cause.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines.
First reported by Pete Nakos on 3, Sherrone Moore is out. Michigan has promoted Biff Poggi to be the interim head coach. I should say I didn't see this coming now. I thought maybe they didn't have the evidence. So I'm not going to name the staffer. But yes, he was supposedly having an inappropriate relationship with a staffer. Why have I not reported it? All the rivals are about to say, because I don't have any evidence. And I knew people were working on the evidence. I knew Michigan was working on it, and it was going to come to some kind of fruition here. And if you want to know when the last time I said something about me being confident in the future of the program under Sherrone Moore, it would be before I found out about this around USC week. So Michigan, now without a head coach, it's late into the process. The man I would have chosen to lead the program is now at Penn State. But now the inopportune timing for all of this. And it's really disappointing, especially when you hear that he was having an inappropriate relationship. The memes are just going to go nuts, right? With everything. And it's an embarrassment on the program that this is something that happened. It's inexcusable. And there's a reason why you haven't heard me say any glowing things about Sherrone Moore for a while here. It's absolutely inexcusable. That is, for all the talk about being about the team, all that stuff, you know, about putting each other first, about doing the things that it takes to win. Well, you're doing things that are detrimental, not only to the team, but to the program. And that's where they're at. And now they have no choice but to go and try to figure some things out at a somewhat inopportune time. Now you can go and get a head coach, and I think that for a lot of fans, this is weirdly going to be very popular because we've been seeing people talking about wanting Sherrone gone just by virtue of what's happened on the field. Having a first-time head coach that's not leading the team the way that you would hope. But it's also coming off of signing day. It's interesting that they trotted him out there this week. That's kind of why I thought, like, okay, they clearly haven't unearthed any evidence. Because, again, I didn't have any evidence as to this. I just heard the rumblings that have been going on. And it's a real shame. I feel bad for those kids. I feel bad for his wife and his family. And, but you know what? When you're put into that position of power, you just can't do what you've done. You can't. It's not just immoral, it's inexcusable. And this is one of those things where I also say, don't put a lot of make college football coaches your heroes. There's going to be a lot of people dunking on him, and while they excuse their own coach's bad behavior. So note that. But at the same time, we're talking about Sherrone Moore. We're talking about Michigan. And it's not only a terrible look, it's terrible timing. These are the types of things that can crater the program. And you hope that Michigan can get it right and can find someone that is more of a paragon of integrity. Because if you're Michigan and you want to be the, quote, leaders and best, you want to be known as the team that does things the right way, it's disappointing to know that you hired someone that absolutely made sense that you hired him, but like clearly there needed to be some more vetting that went on. And I don't know how you vet this, but I'm at somewhat of a loss for words now that this has happened, but it's beyond disappointing. It's beleaguering. It's angering. We'll eventually probably have Jack Tuttle back on the show to talk about this, but it's very disappointing to know that he put the program underneath himself and his own desires. Because, like I said, these are the types of things that can kill programs. And it comes at a time that Michigan just signed its recruiting class. My phone is blowing up off the hook. That's another distraction. But, it comes at the expense of the recruiting class, the transfer portal, all of these things. But I do know that the donors have been kind of up in arms since Washington, around the time I found out about it. So I think that plays a bit of a role. We just talked about the recruiting class. You hope that you can keep it intact. I think it helps to have Biff Poggi leading the charge as an interim, going up against Texas. That might help with a bunch of other things. Makes you wonder how distracted he was in terms of getting some things, getting the team to perform at its highest potential. And you just hope that everyone can get everything kind of going on the right track. But it didn't really say anything because it didn't really sound like anything was happening. And, rumblings and, for the haters out there, you have to understand, I can't report every rumor that comes across. And just because I heard about it doesn't mean that I can say it, because, there's such things as having evidence and, libel laws and things of that nature. If I report a rumor and ends up not being true, we end up being in a world of hurt. And I had no evidence, but I had heard enough rumors and rumblings to indicate that this was a real scenario that's been going on for quite some time. So good on Michigan for moving quickly once they kind of were able to kind of find out what was happening there. Right. So that's good on Michigan. And you hope that Ward Manuel can find his next Dusty May on the football side. But it's going to be the biggest job that has been open. Obviously, Michigan's got the players, it's got the resources, it's got all of that. But shame on him is not just for putting other players' lives and livelihoods in jeopardy, but also the coaches that don't necessarily deserve this, right? And it's an absolute shame that. I mean, that's just going to be the point of this whole show, is just shame. There's nothing nice I can say about this, because it's selfish, and it's taking something that was built into something good and positive, despite all of the cheating, and that's a different kind of cheating going on, right? It takes something that was built into something like good and somewhat stable. And I know he was kind of left a mess in the wake of the Jim Harbaugh stuff with him, kind of not filling out the rosters and all of that. But man, like, just to put your own self in those shoes, to be in that spot where, like, Michigan's a dream job for many, right? Like, there are bigger coaches than him that have pined for the Michigan job. Right? Urban Meyer had 3 dream jobs. He got to be the head coach at one of them, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Michigan. And so there are bigger, more accomplished coaches that had that dream, and you're throwing it away and you're cratering the program. Now, you hope that the program doesn't crater, but you're putting the program in a precarious position for your own selfish goals. There's nothing good I can say about that. Right? And it's a shame that this is there have just been a series of people who have come through this program in recent years, whether it's him or it's Matt Weiss. It's not endemic to the program, but it does say vetting needs to be a lot better than it's been. And it does. And not that you're able to necessarily vet hey, is this person like a secret creeper? That's hard to vet. I'm not saying that's easy to do, but it's Michigan's supposed to be about character no matter what the rivals say. It's supposed to be. It's supposed to be about doing things the right way, on the field, off the field, all of the above. Sherrone's got a wife at home with multiple kids. He's just had a baby recently. And so for all of this to progress to this point and now get put out there, I mean, like I feel terrible for Kelly Moore. I feel awful for her. And I've felt awful for her for some time here. I'm glad that Michigan investigated it, got to the bottom of it, and ended this charade of leadership. I'm very happy about that. I am not happy about the timing. I'm not happy about it happening after a bunch of guys put pen to paper. I'm not happy about it happening at all, right? But I'm happy that Michigan actually got the job done, and now they get to move on. And you just hope that you can keep everything together in this new world of college football. And they're a little bit behind the 8 ball, and they're going to have to figure out what to do from here. And we're going to have to start trying to figure out ourselves who's going to be the next person that's going to be the right person to lead this program. I mean, if Biff Poggi goes out and coaches a really good game, I know he didn't do great in Charlotte. Charlotte's a hard place to win. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing him at least in an interim role for a year. Not that you want that, but while you figure things out. But I mean, there's a reason why this works for Michigan in terms of you have a first year head coach. This isn't just a scenario where Michigan is first time head coach, not first year, second year. But there's a reason why he didn't have exactly a big payout as it was, and now he doesn't get any of it. So you lost it all. And for what? And for what?
NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game. You're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
The Pats have not won the AFC East since 2019, and the Bills do not plan on making it easy on them to win it this Sunday.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's the biggest storyline in Buffalo this week after the Bills beat Joe Burrow in Cincinnati last weekend?
Yeah, I think it's about building off of that performance, one that you feel like can really galvanize a football team for a big stretch run that obviously has a lot at stake. Of course, this Sunday, playing the Patriots, and we know what's at stake. The Patriots win this thing. They end the Bills' 5-year reign on top of this division. And, of course, as you mentioned, Bills don't want that to happen. And maybe it's going to happen, Nick, but for the Bills, just not Sunday, right? Not in Foxborough. Not like that. I think that's kind of the emphasis. But obviously, Josh Allen had a huge game against the Bengals as the AFC Offensive Player of the Week. The defense certainly gave up some production against Cincinnati, but came away with the big plays that are kind of the hallmark of this defense and have continuously showed up for them. And so how do you build off of that and go into New England and avoid what's at stake for New England to happen? And I think there's a lot for them to correct from the early season loss where they made a ton of mistakes.
Yeah.
And obviously was a big launch point, I think, for New England in their season. And so it's about an opportunity, I think, is the big word that I'm looking for here.
Yeah, the Christian Bedford pick six was bananas. It was just a fantastic play by him. I wonder, before I get into my thoughts about the biggest story for the Patriots on their side, I would agree with you. Obviously, the vibes, quote unquote, are much different if you lose the division inside the stadium and you're watching it play out. That would be something that I'm sure Buffalo does not want to go through. I'm kind of interested to get your point of view and Buffalo's point of view about that game in week 5. Is it looked at as, hey, look, Bills just didn't play well enough? The Patriots are not necessarily as scary as some people are maybe making them out to be? Or do you think the Bills, do you think fans, even yourself, do you look at the Patriots and say, no, this is a legitimate team. The schedule stuff is the schedule stuff. They're good enough to win again?
I think you could probably get a lot of different answers from quote unquote Bills people to that. So I can only answer it for myself. And I'll say this. I look back at, is it week 4, week 5, whenever that was?
Week 5.
And I just think about mistakes. 3 giveaways. They fumbled on their first 2 drives.
Yeah.
And they had crippling penalties as well, 11 penalties for 90 yards. And I'm not saying that the Bills are above that happening again, but those feel like very uncharacteristic things for the Buffalo Bills. And so I don't think they will put themselves in those positions again. As far as my perception of the New England Patriots, Nick, I go back to our conversation back then. I think Drake May is awesome. I think Drake May is probably number 2 in the MVP conversation right now behind Matthew Stafford. I think it's a 4-person race between Stafford at number 1, Drake May, who I think is comfortably number 2. I think Josh Allen has kind of entered the chat. Jordan Love's in the conversation as well. And I think that's what's going to be sorted out over the last 4 weeks of the season. I think the world of Drake May. And I know that Bills Mafia doesn't want to hear that, but I'm not going to pretend like he's not an awesome player.
Right.
The only thing I don't like about him is that he plays for the Patriots. The skill set is outstanding. The human being seems awesome. The personality, the way he's endearing himself to the fan base and to his team is incredible. And so I'm in on Drake May. I am not going to diminish the results of the New England Patriots. They're in contention for the number 1 seed for a reason. They keep stacking wins. And while you can point to the schedule, and look, I think it's fair to say they have taken advantage of the last place schedule.
Right.
But at the same time, when they've had opportunities to blow it, they don't. And they've been there, right? Against the Saints, against the Bengals. Was it the Falcons game? Against the Bills. They've had chances to blow it, and they don't. And that's a sign of a good team. And so you're not going to catch me diminishing Drake May. You're not going to catch me diminishing the New England Patriots. I think they're a really good operation. And if I'm a Patriots fan, I got to be really excited about where this thing's headed.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment, Joe, from you, and I don't expect anything less. I would also say, your feelings towards Drake May, very similar to my feelings towards Josh Allen. I wish he was not a Buffalo Bill, but man, oh man, it's crazy to not respect that guy and understand that he is one of the best doing it today. I asked you that question because I honestly think the story for me for this game for the Patriots is the opportunity to prove that week 5 was not a fluke, right? Buffalo, some people might look at it and say Buffalo might have played with their food a little bit, especially early on in that game. You mentioned the 3 turnovers, the -2 in turnover differential in that game. 1 turnover was at the 50-yard line. Another turnover was that terrible pick and decision by Josh Allen at the New England 19-yard line. So you had chances to arguably score twice, and you turned it over, and that's not something that the Buffalo Bills do very often. The Patriots, meanwhile, they've only forced 14 takeaways in their first 13 games. So the idea of creating 3 turnovers is very, very unlikely to happen again. And I've got to feel like the Patriots, they have a point to prove. And I would imagine, yes, they beat them in week 5, but even Vegas is telling us Buffalo is the favorite this weekend at Gillette in Foxborough. And the Patriots and Mike Vrabel were asked about that during Wednesday's press conferences. They are well aware of it. So I just feel like the Patriots, even though they won earlier in the year, and even though it was on national television, Sunday Night Football, I still feel like they go into Sunday feeling like we're the underdogs. And we need to prove that week 5 wasn't just, a nice little fluky win. No, we can go out there and beat Josh Allen and the Bills twice in the same season.
I bet Mike Vrabel wouldn't have it any other way. When I saw those opening lines come out of FanDuel and I saw the Bills -1.5, I said, oh boy, Mike Vrabel's got to love this coming out of the bye, obviously with what's at stake to be considered the underdogs in the football game is pretty interesting to me. And certainly something I'm sure that is going to rally that Patriots team for an inspired effort for a game that already has a lot of magnitude to it.
Yeah, and Mike Vrabel's messaging has been clear. It's been significant this week, talking about the opportunity to win a championship this weekend. He is not running away from the challenge. He is not running away from the opportunity. He is making sure that his players are embracing the stakes on Sunday, which I find to be the right message from the head coach yet again. Mike Vrabel has consistently done that all year long, and I feel like he's striking the right chord again with these guys. And Christian Gonzalez said in the locker room today that, when Mike Vrabel, the first meeting they had, he walked in and said, we're going to win this division. So he might have been talking differently in the public, But when he was talking to his team at the very beginning of this process, he told them he believed that they can win this division. So if they go out there on Sunday and they actually do that, week 15, I don't think anybody thought the Patriots would be here, week 15, with a chance to win the division. If they do that, it's even more credibility and trust built within Mike Vrabel from his players.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Broncos and Packers in week 15. Going to be a great matchup between two evenly matched teams, in which obviously winning the turnover battle, minimizing mistakes, those are always important. We're going to talk about that on today's show, as well as Broncos DBs going up against the best wide receiver room in the NFL, at least in my opinion. We'll get Peter's take on that as well. But we're going to start it off by talking about the fact that this could be a Super Bowl 60 preview, and obviously a rematch of the first Super Bowl the Denver Broncos ever won back in the 1997 season.
Don't remind me,
I know
Sarah.
Packers fans didn't want me to start off like that, but you know what? You got
on.
to flex whenever you get the chance, right? So, Peter, excited to break down this matchup with you and obviously talk about this, just the mutual respect, I think, between Broncos and Packers. I mean, just watching this team from afar, it's been really fun to watch Brian Gutekunst, his vision come to life. Obviously, we know the drama from years ago with Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers, but man, they've really morphed into a true contender. And these teams are both battling it out for the number one seed. Is that the biggest storyline for you guys this week?
Yeah, I mean, the Packers played the number one seed in the NFC on Sunday. They play the number one seed in the AFC. And if they lose and a couple other things happen, they'll play the number one seed in the NFC again, because they have the Chicago Bears coming up again on Saturday on a short-ish week in Chicago. Now the travel there is not that big a deal. So like that, I don't think that like that's the short week thing is a problem, but they'll have played a game at altitude. Like I do think there's some wear and tear stuff to look at here for the Packers this late in the season. They haven't had their bye week since early in the year. They had an early bye. So if you want to look at, some of that stuff late in the season, I do think some of that stuff matters, but it has to be for me, the measuring stick game that both of these teams have in front of them. I mean, I think the Packers have not played a defense quite like this since probably the Browns game in terms of what their 4-man pass rush is capable of doing. And then Vance Joseph loves to mix in the blitz stuff too. But here's the thing, Sarah. Jordan Love has been the best quarterback in the NFL against the blitz this year. So blitz at your own risk. Dennis Allen learned that the hard way last week. Love went 9 of 12 for over 170 yards and 3 touchdowns against the blitz last week. So, hey, good luck. Now, as I've been saying all week on radio, on my show, Patrick Surtain does not play in Cleveland. He does not play in Detroit, a very similar style of defense, a lot of man coverage, heavy blitz schemes. Patrick Surtain is a different animal, to be sure. But the Packers don't have that like Jamar Chase player that if you take him out of the offense, it's going to have this huge trickle-down effect. Like Christian Watson has been playing awesome, but that's what makes this matchup so interesting to me, because it's like, okay, the things that the Packers are great at are the things that the Broncos are great at. And the ways that you want to attack this Packers team, the Broncos can do some of those things, but also the Packers play a style of defense that I think could be a problem for Bo Nix. So this is one of those great coach, young quarterbacks trying to prove themselves, all that stuff. There's a lot of symmetry here.
Yeah, there really is. And it's a big reason why I think this might not be our only crossover Thursday episode of the year, right? I mean, our guys would have to wait until next year, right? See you in Santa Clara. So, and by the way, crossover Thursday, as always, is presented by our good friends over there at Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. But the reasons that you mentioned are exactly the reasons why I love this matchup on paper in so many different respects, right? I mean, and we'll get into individual matchups that we like, but you almost have to spend an entire episode going through it, because when you dig into the details of this game, it's like, yeah, the Broncos' aggressiveness defensively, which has been their identity all year long, is exactly the situation in which Jordan Love thrives. You've got the chess match on both sides with Sean Payton going up against Jeff Hafley, who's great at making adjustments. And then obviously on the other side, Matt LaFleur is one of the best play callers in the game, going up against Vance Joseph. And they've each got, in my opinion, just these awesome chess pieces to be able to utilize, which is why I think the biggest storyline in this game, Peter, is coaching. And it's why this matchup is so exciting. Yes, you've got the Jimmies and the Joes, but the coaching in this game, Sean Payton, Vance Joseph, obviously Matt LaFleur, Jeff Hafley. These guys, man, they've got to be the ones to kind of be pulling all the right strings and making sure their guys are being set up to get this big win here down the playoff stretch.
Yeah, and if you're the Packers, like if you go on the road and you handle a 4-man rush that is as formidable as this 4-man rush is, I mean, all year, I've just noticed from afar, whenever I look at the 4-man rush stats, the Packers are always right up there because Micah Parsons he's just that dude. The Broncos have up there all year been in top 5 in pressure rate, in total pressures. I believe they're the number 1 pressure to sack team in the NFL. They're the number 1 yard per pass team in the NFL. And those are the defenses in the NFC the Packers are going to have to beat if they want to go to the Super Bowl. The Rams, the Seahawks, they're the preeminent teams in the NFC outside of Green Bay, and they have formidable defenses. The Packers haven't, like, they've taken care of business against the Lions twice. Again, I think a very structurally similar team. And so now you go on the road and do it because the Packers, if they don't get the number 1 seed, they'll have to do that. This is just such a great measuring stick game. There is no coaching matchup to pick on. There is no, they have a huge injury. And so that changes the whole, there's none of that. This is just mano-a-mano. We love it. And the other thing that is like, maybe whatever, if you're a Broncos fan, because you didn't have it last week in the same way. There was a lot of chirping last week on social media. Bears fans, Packers fans. Stakes to that game in a way that there just isn't for most other games. Now, whether that trickles into the players, I don't know. I think it matters a little bit. Like Keyshawn Nixon. I did that twice in our post-game show. I called Christian Watson Keyshawn Nixon, or maybe it was the other way around.
He had a great catch late in the game, right?
Keyshawn had a cigar after the game. Like, it meant a little bit extra, but like you mentioned, mutual respect. It's nice to now just take a breath, be able to enjoy what I think is going to be an awesome football game against another really good team, and not have to worry about what happens on social media afterwards, and not have to think about what's happening all week on social media. Just actually focus on football, because next week I got to do this all over again, Sarah. I got to live this life again against the Bears and their fans next week. So that's part of just like my own personal narrative. I'm just going to get to enjoy the football part of this because there's so many interesting places to poke at here and try and find, like, I think how these teams want to attack the other ones. And like you said, we'll dig into the matchups, is going to be telling about how they think they can perform in the postseason. It'll give us a little window into that, because against the Raiders last week, like, the Broncos didn't have to play their best game to get a win, but they've had some games here, Houston, Kansas City, where they've had to. And so this is another game where it's like, you're going to have to play your playoff game this week if you want to win. And so what does a playoff game plan look like for the Broncos? What does a playoff game look like for the Packers? I'm just like, that part of it. We're going to gain some real knowledge about these two teams, I think, too.
We really are. And something that you mentioned is another wrinkle that I'm really interested to see how it plays out, because like you said, the focus is all on football in this game for these two teams. I mean, obviously there's the off-field stuff every single week, but when it comes to both of these teams, right? I mean, you had all the chirping from Bears fans last week going into that Packers-Bears matchup at Lambeau Field. And then for the Broncos, it's the relief of knowing with certainty, 100% certainty, the Kansas City Chiefs will not be winning the AFC West this year, and you are now in the driver's seat to do that. So like you said, there's no big injury in this game. There's no deficiency on either side in the coaching department. Everybody's healthy. Everybody's playing well right now. The Broncos are on a 10-game winning streak. Packers on a 4-game win. So
it'd be nice to have Tucker Kraft if you're the Packers against one of the best defenses in the NFL.
Nice to have, 100%.
But the offense has found answers the last few weeks without him. So it doesn't feel this like Christian Watson. I gave the stats the other day on my show. Only 5 receivers in the NFL with at least 30 targets this year have more yards per route run this year than Christian Watson. He has been unbelievable. And he tore his ACL, Sarah, in the last week of last season. He came back, but like before Halloween. And it's just been killing teams. It's amazing what he's been able to do.
It really has. And he's one of those guys that I can't wait to break down a little bit more. Also, shout out to the Packers for re-signing him preemptively to the 1-year deal that he has now next year. That was a great call by their front office, and awesome for Watson to recognize the situation he's in as well. But he'll make more money someday.
NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game. You're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
Can the Chargers put the nail in the Chiefs' coffin? Is the Chiefs season going to be over?
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Daniel, there is so much to talk about when we start getting into this game. And the biggest storyline right now, at least in my opinion, is you look back and this season started with Kansas City falling to the Chargers in Brazil. And the Chargers have every chance that they could possibly want to basically make it in for Kansas City this week.
This is weird, Chris. We've done this show many times. I haven't been sitting in it in December many times looking with the Chargers looking down on the Chiefs in the AFC West. So this is a pretty foreign feeling. But yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear, what the biggest thing is for each of these teams. It's one team basically trying to clinch their own playoff spot with the win over the Chiefs and what that will do for them tiebreaker wise. And also just as far as their conference record goes. But more than that, you're in December, and not only do you have a chance to, overtake the Chiefs in the AFC West or, have a meaningful game, you have a chance to end it. If the Chargers beat the Chiefs can't catch them, right? You're mathematically eliminated from catching the Chargers. They can't get to 10 wins if you beat them now. The other part of it is, if you don't beat them and then they run the table, that's on you. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I still think that the Chiefs will be the favorites once they play the Broncos again. Chiefs are favorites in this one, 4.5 points last time I checked, and for good reason. It is great for the Chargers to have this opportunity. I don't think it's a house money game or anything like that, but you get this chance. You've taken them out once, and now in December, you have a chance to borderline end their playoff hopes. That's what it is. The AFC is so crowded. If the Chiefs lose this one, I mean, they might need help even if they do win out. If they lose this one, that's a huge blow. And if you're the Chargers, you shouldn't need more motivation than that to get up for this game.
And if you look at it from Kansas City's perspective, you were playing for your playoff lives right now. And quite frankly, I mean, this game is going to be like a Super Bowl matchup for Kansas City to an extent, just because every game left is live or die. If you don't win, you are going to be done. And at this point, you have to win out to even have a chance. And even a chance doesn't get you there, because the Chargers have to lose a couple more games on top of this one in order for Kansas City to really even have a chance. So lots of different things to go into on that. But when you look at this for Kansas City, it's a matter of it's do or die. And I will say I will never really bet against Patrick Mahomes. I just don't think that's a smart thing to do based on his history. But the way that this team has been playing, you can't put it all on Patrick Mahomes' shoulders. And this team has tried to put it all on Patrick Mahomes' shoulders way too many times this season, and not helping with the supporting staff. Travis Kelce having some big drops last week. Noah Gray having a couple of big drops last week. Rashee Rice having a huge drop last week. All of that played into a situation where they should have beat Houston, or at least been in a position to go down and win at the end, and they couldn't because a lot of their playmakers just couldn't do anything right and get the ball catch the ball when they needed to.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Because this is something that obviously Justin Herbert has had to deal with way too much in his career, where it's just that, the whole offense is what is Justin Herbert going to do, and how far can he carry us with his right arm? Are we going to protect him? No, not really, right? Are we going to give him a great running game? No, we're not going to do that either. Let's see how far he can take us. To his credit, he's been able to, I think, overachieve with a lot of the rosters that the Chargers have had. Now, the shoe is on the other foot a little bit, but then you look over and see the Chargers who, both all-pro kind of level tackles are sitting on in season-ending injured reserve, and they're going to have their own tough parts of it. But I'm glad you brought up the 10 a.m. start, at least 10 a.m. Pacific time start for Chargers fans out on the West Coast, because that is something that has gotten them so far this year. It's not as long of a trip, but look at the games they lost. I mean, they lost against the Giants, and that game East Coast time, 10-8 or 1 o'clock start East Coast time, 10 o'clock local start for the Chargers. and they play terribly. You look at the Jaguars game where they got beat 35-6. I could have told you 10 minutes into that game that the Chargers were going to lose because it just felt like they never got off the plane. And then you combine that with them struggling to a certain extent against the Dolphins when they were at their lowest, struggling a little bit at the beginning of the game against the Titans. So I don't think that plays into the Chargers' favor. It does feel like a very prototypical CBS 1:25 Pacific time start kind of game. It's a little weird to me that this one is at 10 a.m., but I definitely don't think that plays in the Chargers' favor. And like I said, like there's nothing more dangerous than cornering a wounded animal, right? Like the Chargers are still going to have to play their A game. And I think last week, maybe one of the more impressive things about it is like they didn't have their A game on Monday Night Football against the Eagles, and they still found a way to kind of grit it out and win by 3 points in a miraculous kind of overtime game. But the reason this is so important for the Chargers is like, yeah, if you lose this, you're not out of the playoffs, right? But they might be the underdog in every game they have for the rest of the season. They're an underdog this week to the Chiefs, and they also have the Cowboys, the Texans, and the Broncos still left on their schedule. So there's no game that is a given for this Chargers team, and they absolutely, if they don't play well, can lose out, right? And give someone like the Chiefs a chance in a crowded AFC. So as much as this is about finishing the Chiefs, it's also about securing your own playoff spot because there's no easy win left on their schedule.
Well, and I would also argue that at least looking at it from the Chargers perspective, if you can't put Kansas City away in this scenario, how do you feel like you're going to be producing when you get to the playoffs if you make the playoffs?
100%.
Like that's my big thing. If I was talking about the Chargers, that would be my big thing. If they can't finish off a wounded duck Kansas City team that has just killed themselves multiple times this season, how are you going to do things when teams are actually playing better in the playoffs? So I'm going to be very curious to see how this game shakes out. And I am getting a little curious that it's a noon start. Like Kansas City hasn't had that many of those this season. And to have a Chargers game this late in the year and still be at a noon start was kind of surprising to me. So I will be interested to see how that plays into things. Roman versus Spags and the Chiefs offensive line versus this Chargers defensive line. So much to talk about when we start looking at the matchups in this game. I will let you go ahead and start. Daniel, go right ahead.
Yeah, I think when you think about the biggest matchups in this game, like there are a lot of one-on-one matchups you could go with, but I think for the Chargers, the overarching thing here is just their offensive coordinator, who's coming off one of the worst game plans and worst offensive performances of the season, going up against someone who's as seasoned as and experienced as Steve Spagnuolo. Because one thing that was actually pretty surprising is how off guard he caught Spags in week one, right? With the play action, Spags said as much afterwards, hey, we thought they were going to pound the rock. They ended up going a bunch of play action, and then they got us early. And as that game kind of evened out a little bit, they were much more blow for blow than the beginning, where the Chargers definitely kind of had them on the wrong foot. And I think that you can't get them again with that, right? Like that's the thing, is that you surprise us once, that's fine. You're not going to be able to get away with the same things this week if you're Greg Roman. So you have to have a different kind of, you have to have a different game plan than you did when these two teams matched up in Brazil. Now, he has, more going from him from the standpoint of now, at least at this point of the season, you're getting Omarion Hampton back, which is nice. But the offensive line is always going to bring the limitations of what it's going to be with no Rashawn Slater and no Joe Alt. And we saw it last week. I mean, the Chargers gave up about 70% pressures on Justin Herbert's dropbacks. Like, that's an insane number. Like, it's an unsustainable number. Patrick Mahomes didn't even face that when he was missing his 3 top linemen last week. It's just a disgusting number you can't win with. But if you're Greg Roman, you know this, right? You have to know the limitations of what you have going offensively. And I think that is going to be a huge thing in this game, is what does he have for Steve Spagnuolo? Because I saw him give up 5 free rushers in the A-gap last week. If you're not more prepared this week, you're not going to win. You're not going to win this game with 1 offensive touchdown. Like, it's just not going to happen. So to me, Greg Roman versus Steve Spagnuolo is definitely the biggest matchup.
I laughed when you talked about the pressure rate Justin Herbert was under, because I'm sitting here thinking he just also had surgery on his off hand.
Yeah.
And has a broken hand. So, good luck with that. That's not fun to deal with. And 70% rusher, 70% pressure rate is not something you ever want to have your star quarterback being.
I've never even seen that number before in that context. Right. I've never seen it get up to 70. That is crazy.
Well, Kansas City's dealt with 50 some percent multiple times.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing, and we'll talk about the Chiefs offensive line here in just a moment, but the crazy thing is last week, you look at last week's game and your starting left tackle's out Josh Simmons is out for the year at this point. I think it's probably the year at this point. I don't think he'll come back from his broken wrist at this late stage, unless it's late in the playoffs. But that's a very far down thing that we will talk about.
Got to get there first,
right? But then Wanye Morris, the first snap of the game for the Chiefs offense, goes out and hurts his knee and is out for the rest of the game. So you have Isapole step in and be a starter at left tackle basically the entire rest of the game against what I feel is probably easily a top 3 defensive line, if not the top defensive line in the NFL. And while he didn't pitch a shutout, I think he only allowed 2 pressures on the day. And considering what he was going up against, that's pretty impressive from a rookie.
Yeah, of course. Of course the Chiefs can pull their third string left tackle and have him give up only 2 pressures against the Houston Texans defense. And the thing is when you're judging the Houston Texans defense, it's not just about how talented the defensive line is, because that is a very talented unit. It's also about the elite guys they have behind that defensive line, which means you're going to have to hold on to that ball a little longer than you want to, because the coverage from guys like Derek Stingley and Jalen Petrie and Caleb Bullock on the back end is so ridiculous, right? I mean, Kamari Lassiter. That's the hard thing about this Chargers team is obviously I watched the game Sunday Night Football last week. I watched it again this week just to think about what the Chargers can kind of do this week. And it's hard because it's like, well, the Chargers don't have Will Anderson, right? Or like, it's just hard because that Texans defense is so good. It's hard to really kind of have big takeaways from that Chiefs offense who blew multiple opportunities, like you said. But on the other side of that, though, the Chargers have to be able to take advantage of the KC offensive line. And we were talking a little bit before the show. You do think they might get a little bit healthier this week?
Yeah, I do. I think that it's possible that they're going to get Trey Smith back, and if they get him back, I think that could be a huge boon to the middle of the offensive line. The one thing that I think is interesting is while he isn't technically a rookie, Kingsley Suamataia stepped into a starting role, taking over for Joe Thuney, and massive shoes to fill. And I'm not saying he's filled them, but he has played very well, and he's gotten better each quarter of the season. So if you can get to a point where you have Kingsley and Creed and Trey Smith is back, then you feel really good about, your interior of your offensive line. And then it's the question of how do you help the tackles? I don't know that Juwan Taylor is going to practice. He was limited on Wednesday, so it's possible he would end up playing, but I still wonder if he'll be able to go. And the other big question when you start talking about that and how this is going to play out is Isapole going to continue to be your left tackle if Juwan Taylor comes back, or are you going to put in Jalen Moore, who you signed in the offseason, even though Isapole just had an amazing game against the Houston Texans with no real practice and no real prep?
NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
The Thunder make history by blowing out the Phoenix Suns.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast.
The Thunder just trounced the Phoenix Suns. I mean, it was an embarrassing beatdown, and the Suns were dejected from opening tip, frankly. Whenever Cason Wallace just takes candy from a baby after the opening tip to start the game up 2-0 with a pick six as he gets 4 steals in a matter of minutes. Like, this was special from Oklahoma City. They looked rattled, the Suns did, with no Devin Booker, of course. And when you looked at this game, this was the recipe for Oklahoma City. Even with Devin Booker, the Suns had 18 turnovers last time out, and they really struggled to score. But their defense kept them in it. They're especially rebounding, kept them in it, winning the rebounding margin like 57-31 last time out. In this game, it was much different. I mean, the Thunder went 11-2 to open the game on the 11-2 run, and the Suns just couldn't do anything. They just could not find a groove offensively, and it remained as such throughout the entire game. I mean, in the non-Shea minutes, in the second quarter, The Suns really made their one and only run of the game. They were able to get it within, from down more than 20 to within about 13. And yet SGA comes back in and settles the ship and quickly fights off this run from the Suns. But SGA led the team on a 20 to 6 run to end the half, and that was all she wrote. And that continued into what ended up being the second half that boasted the Thunder's largest lead of the season. There were some fireworks. I mean, the most fireworks from this game was Grayson Allen clotheslining Chet Holmgren and getting ejected because he didn't want to be there any longer to witness this blowout. And that really summarized what was a very frustrating night for the Suns. You had that flagrant 2. You had Dylan Brooks for no reason fouling Lou Dort on a breakaway in transition for an and 1 to kind of make matters worse for Phoenix. J-Dub said after the game that this kind of flagrant foul from Grayson Allen really ignited the team, and you could see that with how J-Dub reacted to it. I mean, they immediately come together. They've got to be separated, and then J-Dub, as he's going back to the bench, is just trying to fire up the crowd as much as possible. But again, the Thunder, in a season in which they've done more blowing out than simply winning, they get their largest lead of the season in this game, getting up by 53 points. That's the largest lead ever in an NBA Cup game. And in this game, there was no lead change. I believe it was tied 2-2 at one point. But other than that, it went wire to wire for OKC to beat down these Phoenix Suns. And this Suns defense has been really good all season long. And yes, missing Booker is a problem. The turnovers were a problem as well, to not let Phoenix really get settled into a half-court defense, I should say, the entire game. But what the Thunder did to this Suns defense is special. And the Thunder curbed their one real glaring issue from the last time against one another, which was the rebounding battle. The Thunder win the glass 48-43. That was an area that the Suns dominated, and it helped Phoenix make up for their 18 turnovers. And then not only did they lose the glass this time instead of dominate it, Phoenix had 20 turnovers tonight. And it just made matters worse. But the Thunder shot video game numbers tonight. The defenses that the Suns try to throw at them, they try to throw zone, they try to trap and blitz off screens. They tried to do everything under the sun, and nothing worked. And it resulted in OKC putting up video game numbers. I mean, the Thunder shot 59% from the floor, 59% from the floor, 55% from 3, and 92% at the free throw line. Like 59, 55, 92 is just not a regular night in the office, especially against the defense that has been flirting with the top 10 unit all season long. Meanwhile, the Suns, I mean, they were just dreadful. They couldn't rebound, couldn't stop turning the ball over, couldn't play defense, and also couldn't shoot. They shot 39% from the floor, 32% from 3, and 81% at the free throw line. OKC wins points in the paint 50-42, a number that really should have been much wider, of course, but Chet only had to play in 2.5 quarters because Chet was taking everything away in the paint. We'll talk about that more coming up. The fact that OKC still won second chance points says a lot about both teams, considering OKC wins second chance points 9-6. The Thunder didn't miss very often. They shot 59% from the floor, and yet the Suns, who missed quite often, shooting 39% from the floor, just could not get second chance opportunities. OKC did lose the fast break column 20-18. That's a bit misleading with the blowout minutes, but the Thunder did capitalize on 34 points off of those 20 Suns turnovers. OKC wins in a jaw-dropping 138-89 win to punch their ticket to Vegas. So now the Thunder await the winner of the Lakers and Spurs contest that's going on right now. They'll play that winner in Vegas on Saturday. That'll be the 82nd game that's missing from the schedule right now. So those two will play Saturday. The winner of that will, of course, play Tuesday in the NBA Cup Championship against the winner of the Magic and Knicks. So we'll see how this all plays out moving forward. We'll have the whole week to preview the NBA Cup and get you ready for what all Vegas has in store. But this win is also the 16th straight win of the year for OKC. That is a new franchise record. Think about how many great teams that this Thunder organization has had. How many great players this Thunder organization has had. And yet they have the franchise best winning streak. The 24-1 start for the Thunder ties Golden State
back whenever the Warriors rattled off 73 wins in a season for the best start in NBA history through 25 games. The Warriors obviously got there in a different way. They won 24 straight and then lost the 25th game. The Thunder took their loss a bit earlier against Portland on the second night of a back-to-back, but ultimately 24-1 is 24-1. And it was really impressive to see the Thunder from the word go play discipline, play with intensity, play with aggression, and that continued for the full 48 minutes. Even down to the bench mob, even down to the two-way guys. Every member of the Thunder scored tonight. Like these guys were just cold-blooded killers against the Suns team that 5 minutes into the game wanted to be anywhere else but Oklahoma City.
NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
This is the Spurs Postcast, your instant game reaction for the San Antonio Spurs.
Big win, big win, big win. Let's talk about it. I'm ready, Casey.
This is what you'll be talking about.
All right, and there is a lot to talk about because the first half was something that we have seen kind of become commonplace over the past few weeks with this Spurs team. A really good first half, really strong offensively, really efficient, and another one that they had a double-digit lead in. Fourth straight game that they've taken that into the halftime break. This one by 13 points. They were on top. Hit over 50% of their threes in the first half, 29 bench points. Keldon had 13 in the first quarter alone. You're looking great. But like we just mentioned, the previous few nights, the third quarters, and really, well, more than the previous two nights, it was just really bad the previous two nights. Third quarters have been a thing, and teams have gotten back into the game. So how do the Spurs, a team that's been plagued by this for weeks now, with this third quarter coming out of the break woes, they opened the third quarter on a quick 10-2 spurt to blow that advantage up, pushing 20, each of which Stephon Castle either scored and assisted on in some capacity. And as a result, the advantage is 17 going into the fourth quarter of play. Fourth quarter, they go up by 23. And now you're waiting for that Laker push to happen. They had a couple little flurries of life in the third, but the Spurs, to their credit, kicked them back down. But now the real push happens. Marcus Smart hit 8 threes in this game tonight. He hit his 8th, gets them back within 11. Austin Reeves, the ensuing play, gets an and one. But the Spurs, some big-time buckets down the stretch. Ultimately, they close things out on the back of Stephon Castle, 30 points, 10 boards, 6 assists. De'Aaron Fox, 20 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists as well. Surviving 35, 5, and 8 from Luka, 19, 15, and 8 from LeBron. They do the job, and they walk away with a 132-119 victory, and one that they obviously needed to get, and just impressive on a whole bunch of fronts. That speaks volumes about where this team is at as they continue to make that push and put people on notice.
Yeah, well, it talks about the depth of what it is that this roster has. And, you know, we've been able to talk about different guys, different nights. But, you know, tonight it was everybody, and just a great team win as far, you know, as that goes. But man, you know, Coach Mitch was great in the strings that he pulled, and just the team, you know, like you said, in LA, a bunch of stars. LA has their stars. Some of their guys were stepping up, and San Antonio was able to counterpunch that and get a big victory in a big-time environment tonight.
Yeah, let's go back to the biggest counterpunch, because that's going to be our turning point tonight.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
All right, so I mentioned that Austin Reeves and one. It cut it to a 122-114 game with 3:50 left to go. And how does San Antonio respond? The ensuing possession, Stephon Castle comes right down the floor. They run a beautiful set a drive and kick situation. Fox catch and shoot, knocks
Mhm.
down the triple. They go back up by 11, just outside of 3 minutes left. And that's kind of the last little bit of life before a couple moments after JJ pulls the plug, takes the starters out, and the Spurs get into accept the fact that they're moving on. I thought tonight was the first time not the first time, the best, I guess, we've seen so far of the Castle and De'Aaron Fox thing, in my opinion, because it felt like there was not as much, and there still is an element of it I get mine, you get yours, and just go back and forth type deal. That's not going away overnight, but it felt like there was the most fluidity that they've had, the most chemistry that they've had, not as much stagnation. I mean, the team as a whole, they put up a $132 tonight. And I look at that play again. Yeah, I think it was a turning point in the game, but I also think that was kind of like a microcosm, so to speak, as maybe things are shifting for the better with the two of them. And it certainly appeared that way tonight.
Well, it's funny because, every time Castle was scoring, I thought about you and Jeff and who y'all picked on the tandem. And I was just smiling to myself because, we saw this at the beginning of the year, before he got hurt, where he was going with his basketball game. What a night to have the night that he had, and on the stage that it was. And it just shows you where he's going to be, come 3-4 years from now. And like I said, I'd seen this, and I'm not taking anything away from Dylan Harper or anything like that. But, when you talk about, some of the plays he made, especially at the start of that third quarter, when the Spurs have been having all those problems. And I don't know, we jumped on, but De'Aaron Fox was talking about some of the things that they've been talking about in the locker room that third quarter. And you can see the Spurs are tired of hearing that. They're tired of hearing about it on the streets, and they're tired of hearing about it from Mitch. And they answered tonight, Casey.
Yeah, I mentioned Dylan Harper. He goes for 13 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. Julian Champagny and Harrison Barnes each putting up 16. Keldon Johnson, 17 and 8. Collectively, they end up putting up 48 bench points, hit 50% of their shots, 45% from 3. Not a whole lot to really single out. Negative. It felt like we were just kind of reverting back to, it's our job to be diplomatic and find something to nitpick. Maybe not as strong as nitpick, so to speak, but there's some kind of flaw to acknowledge and things they can fix. And yeah, there are. But if you're anything like me, you were just waiting for that rally to really go for the worst. Because it's the NBA, because we hang out now. I quote you all the time when every team makes a run. So now I look smart. So now I look smarter whenever I say that because I hang out with you. So you knew that was coming from the Lakers. That wasn't but I just love the fact that the counter punches kept happening, and it was from everywhere. And they were doing it in every single type of way, whether it was a Fox isolation to get a bucket, whether if it was a stop leading to a transition score, a Harper layup. You saw it all the way. I mean, LeBron dunked on Cornette into the next solar system, whatever you want to call it. And so everyone at the Staples Center is going nuts. And what does Cornette do? The Spurs, they get the stop, they get the bucket. He comes back, he gets a block, and it leads to another score. And instead of an eight-point game at the break, it's 12. So things like that, they add up. And tonight you really saw it. You really saw it, that everybody found a way to do it. And I know it's cliche because we've been saying this, I don't know, for however long we've been saying it, that it takes a little bit of everyone without Victor, but that keeps being the case. And tonight was just a fantastic job of that, of just being there, being ready for what the Lakers were going to hit you with, and shutting the door, kicking them while they're down. And they did.
All right, so there's a couple of things there. So what we try and do, which is why we love doing this, is when the Spurs they've given us a lot of ammo when they lose, right? What we do is we try and give the side of why it is that they lose and why it is they have these negative things. You talk about tonight, and this is something. Luke Cornette, like I said, I'm going to go back to De'Aaron Fox's interview because of the shirt that he had on. Everybody's got the little symbol now. Those shirts were in the locker room already. I don't know if they got passed out because of the win or because they got dunked on by one of the top 5 players of all time. I'm not sure, but those T-shirts were already there, and it's funny that everybody, is putting them on and things like that. But and my last point about that note is Luke Cornett one day is going to tell his grandkids about LeBron James and being dunked on. They're not going to believe him, but there's videotape everywhere, so they'll believe him, Casey. But to your point, everything that the Lakers, and it started in that second quarter. And the thing that I love is they have the coaches mic'd up. And JJ, obviously, you could hear him talking when they would go to him. But for a while there, and somebody's going to get a talking to because you could hear Mitch. Like when the play was going on, you could hear Coach Mitch, and he was saying, don't fall for their stuff. Don't get sucked into what they're doing. And what that means is Luka's nonsense, pulling the ball through, drawing fouls, LeBron flopping and flipping all over the court. The Lakers started that run in the second quarter. They got into the bonus early, got some free throws to chip into that lead. But to your point, Spurs withstood all of that, played their game, came out and stayed the course and got the win.
Man, the Amazon Prime, I know it's a million different streams. I get it. Like
Yes.
I'm in the same way. It's a pain, but the Prime broadcasts have been fantastic this year.
Yes.
Between the mics next to the bench, between the studio crew, everything about the Amazon Prime experience so far has been tremendous.
And I told you the stuff that I pay attention to, it gives you details and things. Like
Right.
I told you, I look at those assistant coaches and reactions on certain players and things like that. And Casey, I tell you, it helps me out tremendously.
Anything that helps you out helps me out. So I'm glad it's helping you out.